The psychology of people who always need to be doing something. You open your eyes in the morning, and your first thought isn't about how you feel. It's about what you have to do. Before your feet hit the floor, the list has already started forming. The emails, the errands, the project you left half finished. The thing you told yourself you'd finally get to this weekend. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet hum that never quite stops. A low-level urgency that follows you into the shower, into traffic, into dinner, even into the rare moment when nothing is actually wrong and everything should feel fine. But it doesn't feel fine. It feels like you're forgetting something. Like stillness itself is the problem. This looks like ambition. It looks like drive, like discipline, like someone who has their life together. But that's not what this is. Not really. This is something older than productivity. Something the mind learned a long time ago, before you had words for it. And if that sounds familiar, stay with this. You are not broken. You are not addicted to stress or incapable of rest. Your brain hasn't malfunctioned. If anything, it's working exactly the way it was trained to work. The constant motion, the need to fill every gap, the discomfort that creeps in when there's nothing left to do. That's not a character flaw. That's a coping system. A sophisticated, quietly exhausting system your mind built to keep you safe. And it has been working in its own way for a very long time. Let's talk about why. The first thing to understand is what stillness actually feels like to a nervous system that learned early that stillness was dangerous. For some people, quiet is just quiet. For others, quiet is where the noise lives. When the doing stops, the feeling starts. And the feeling is the thing they've been running from. Not consciously, not dramatically, but in the way you instinctively avoid a street you can't explain. The busyness isn't procrastination, it's insulation. Every task is another layer between the surface self and whatever is underneath, waiting to be felt. Psychologists call this experiential avoidance. The behavior isn't about what you're moving toward, it's about what you're moving away from. Anxiety, grief, a quiet sadness that doesn't have a clear cause, a sense of emptiness that's easier to outrun than to sit with. And the brain, clever and adaptive, learns that motion works. That doing something, anything, interrupts the feeling before it fully arrives. Think about the last time you were truly still and something uncomfortable surfaced. Not a bad memory necessarily, just a feeling, a vague unease, a question you didn't want to answer. The brain noticed, and it filed that information away. Stillness equals exposure. Motion equals safety. But here's where it gets interesting, because this isn't only about avoidance. For many people, the need to always be doing something is also deeply tied to how they learn to measure their own worth. In certain environments, certain families, certain schools, certain cultures, love and approval were not freely given. They were earned. Through performance, through productivity, through being useful, impressive, tireless. The child who was praised for being busy, the student who got attention when they achieved, the adult who learned, without anyone saying it directly, that their value was conditional on their output. Over time, this becomes identity, not just behavior. The doing isn't something you do, it's something you are. And stopping, truly stopping, feels like disappearing. Like if you're not producing something, you're not anything. There's a concept in attachment theory called earned security. The idea that some people don't receive consistent warmth just for existing. They receive it for performing. And so the nervous system gets wired to equate stillness with unworthiness. Rest starts to feel like laziness, not recovery. A slow afternoon starts to feel like failure, not pleasure. This is not your fault. This is what you were taught love looked like. And here's the part nobody tells you. The urgency doesn't always come from fear or from the past. Sometimes it comes from the one place that feels most real, the present moment. Because for some people, motion is the only time they feel genuinely alive, not numb, not managed. There's a concept called flow. That state of total absorption where time disappears and the self quiets. For people who struggle with restlessness, doing is sometimes the only reliable route to that feeling. The project isn't just a project. It's the one place where the mind stops splitting and starts focusing, where the internal chatter goes quiet, and there is only this task, this moment, this particular thing. The doing isn't an escape from life, it's the closest thing to presence they know, which means the behavior that looks like avoidance is sometimes actually connection. A crooked, effortful, unsustainable connection. But connection nonetheless. The brain found something that works, and it holds on. What's also true is that this changes across a life in ways that catch people off guard. In your 20s, the doing feels like ambition. There's a narrative that supports it. Culture rewards it. You're building something. The urgency has an address. But somewhere in the middle years, something shifts. The busyness starts to feel heavier. The list gets longer, but the satisfaction gets thinner. You start wondering what you're actually doing all of this for. And that question is louder now than it was at 22. Not because you've changed, but because the same behavior is meeting a different interior landscape. The nervous system hasn't stopped needing motion, but some part of you, deeper, quieter, has started wondering what would happen if you let it rest. Not because rest sounds appealing, but because exhaustion has finally gotten louder than anxiety. And that is not a crisis, that is growth. Here is what the brain is actually doing when it keeps you in motion. It is regulating, quietly, constantly, without asking permission. The doing is an anchor, not a chain, even when it feels like one, an anchor. In the chaos of a complicated internal world, having something to do is the thing that makes the ground feel solid. It restores a sense of agency when everything else feels out of control. It gives the mind somewhere to put its energy that has a shape, a start, a finish. Something measurable in a world that often refuses to be. Think of it like a familiar room. You've been in this room before. You know where the furniture is. You know how the light comes in. You could walk through it in the dark. Busyness is that room. It is the mental environment where your nervous system knows the rules, knows the exits, knows how to function. Stillness, by contrast, is an unfamiliar hallway, quiet and potentially fine, but not yet known. And the brain is always going to prefer what it knows. So if you are someone who always has to be doing something, someone who fills silences with tasks and finds rest more exhausting than work, here is what is true about you. Your brain learned something. It learned to move through the world in a particular way, for reasons that made complete sense at the time, and still carry logic now, even if the context has changed. You are not incapable of stillness. You are simply someone for whom stillness has never felt neutral. And there is a difference between those two things, a significant one. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are not someone who needs to be fixed. You are someone whose mind found a way to cope with being human in a world that is often overwhelming, often uncertain, and occasionally unkind. And it found motion. It found doing. It found the feeling of forward. That is not a flaw. That is survival, wearing productivity's clothes. And now that you see it, really see it, that's enough.